Here she comes again. And there she is.
Catch us if you can.
Connected to audio. Okay. We see you. Do we hear we? Do you hear us?
Hosts can
There
can
you
you
go.
hear me?
Live. We are live.
Yay.
Well, live
Hi.
from the Plutopia News Network. This is the Plutopia Happy Hour, and we're all here tonight. Maggie Duvall is in house, so she's not really here. She's there. I'm Scoop Sweeney. I'm out here in the woods as usual. Susie Sheeler is coming in on her phone this time. And over in South Austin, it's John Lebkowski. Hello, John.
I'm in the woods. I'm very sure of that.
Lost in the woods.
Lost in the woods, lost in the fun house.
So what are we going to do tonight? It's just us, an intimate gathering of like and unlike minds.
I think I will go to our Facebook group and post a link to this.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Let the
It will
folks
say,
know we're
"Join us
here."
live," because we are going to talk about thorny issues tonight.
Thorny issues, cactus? Cacti?
Cacti. Let's see. There we go.
Oh, there you go, thorny.
Yay.
Politics. Politics makes
Politics.
strange bedfellows. I'm not really sure what that means. What is a bedfellow?
Someone
Hopefully not a bed bug.
So,
no, I mean I think I know.
what is it? What is it?
It's a fellow bed hogger. There's like a lot of people that you have to sometimes sleep with, like when you're in the military or you have a big family.
Are you
Bedfellow.
trying to get a movie part?
And that, by the way, is how that's identity right there, because it's fellows, not bed people.
Bed persons, yeah.
A
Politics
bed
makes
person.
strange bed persons.
Mm-hmm.
Bed persons.
We just call them Betties.
Well, Nate
So,
Wilcox was here
that-
last week. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Susie.
No, I was
I'll
going to
tell you
say
mine.
that when you say that, I'm just wondering, you say politics makes strange bedfellows. Are you talking about the way people do business with each other across the aisle, or the fact that sometimes people believe in the same thing you believe in, but other things you cannot come together on?
Well, it's kind of an old saying. And I think that it means that people who otherwise might not join forces will join forces for political reasons.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking now to see whether I can find a definition of that, something that explains it. But
Yeah, right.
Political interests can bring together people who otherwise have little in common. This saying is adapted from a line in a play, The Tempest by William Shakespeare. Misery acquaints a man with strange bedfellows. It is spoken by a man who has been shipwrecked and finds himself seeking shelter besides a sleeping monster. And we have lots of wide awake monsters in politics right now. So that's something worth talking about.
A lot. We say this person is in bed with that person a lot too.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
we're talking about that kind of behavior. So there's the bed connection again. So you were saying about Nate.
So Nate was with us last week. I know neither one of you were here, and I'm guessing you probably haven't had a chance to watch the recording yet, but Nate, is very much about real politics. And he was pretty blunt and frank about how screwed up everything is. And it's all about politics. And I have, for the last few weeks, since I was traveling recently, as you guys probably remember, and while I was on that trip, it hit me that, somehow we need to fix things. We can't go on like this. We have some significant problems. And I think one of the problems is that we try to find solutions through politics, but politics itself is so inherently corrupt and screwed up that it doesn't really offer solutions. So to me, I think the solution is for us to take a very jaundiced view of politics in general, to quit watching cable news, quit identifying with political parties and political candidates and ideologies, especially ideologies, and crazy orange evangelical corporate dudes. Um, and what we really need to do is start being human beings again and deal with things from a base that's real. Be real, work with reality. Politics doesn't really offer us too much reality.
Yeah, the problem
Yeah.
is it impacts your reality though. If you pay too much attention to politics and let it overwhelm you and take over your life, it can really become a a problem of itself. Just being, yeah, I found myself being that being overwhelmed during the elections. Just every day was a different horror story, and it's kind of hard to unplug from that. It's like watching a horrific accident happen, and you can't pull yourself away, even though you really know you shouldn't be watching it.
Yeah, and we call ourselves a news network. We may be a little more like Wayne's World, but we refer to ourselves as the Plutopia News Network, and we are seriously approaching this from our backgrounds in journalism to a pretty great extent. It is kind of a journalistic endeavor, but I was thinking about the other Scoop. Scoop Nisker has this saying, which we've had on our website for a while, and it really hit home with me how meaningful this is. Scoop says, if you don't like the news, go out and make some of your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like the news. I don't like news media. I don't like the way they're reporting. I don't like the interpretations they're making. I think that they're totally throwing gasoline on every fire that they can find. And they love to watch it burn because as it burns, the smoke that rises up rains money on them. That's how they make their bucks, by creating fear and loathing in
I think
a unfortunately gullible populace. Yes, Susie. I will shut up.
no, don't shut up. I think that's very right on. But I also think that if government got out of our personal lives, there would be a lot less of this. There wouldn't be, I don't think this would be a thing if they would just get out of our personal lives.
Though I do
Or
think
it would be.
one distinction we have to make is between government and politics, because politics is like the act of trying to get power over whatever, and government is more like the management of all the various things that,
Right.
Many of them are driven by politics. Laws are passed driven by politics, but there is a distinction to be made there. So dealing with government is also an issue. I think it's related but separate, and it's also something that we should address. If you really wanted to ignore politics entirely, one of the downsides of that, or one of the problems with that, is that you kind of open yourself up to, if you're not paying attention to threats, then threats may overwhelm you. And to me, politics is a threat. I think that we're threatened by, especially the politics du jour. And I don't know. I just think we, as our Plutopia thing, should lead the charge. We should start a movement. And it should be a movement that's anti-news and anti-politics, but at the same time, not ignoring politics, but understanding that politics is is something that will impact us no matter what, whether we ignore it or not. We're still going to suffer the slings and arrows of political fortunes.
You know, I can't remember a time when politics and government weren't inextricably, welded together. They've always been assumed to be one and the same, and it wasn't intended to be that way when they formed governments. But people who desire power and wealth generally try to take over the wheel of government and drive it in the direction that they want to see it go. And it's going to be really hard to separate the two because they haven't been separate for quite some time.
Well, I think
Yeah.
one thing that I've had on my mind for a while is how much of this is tied up in the cult of personality. It's this whole celebrity culture, cult of personality, the guru culture. It's up to somebody else to save me, not for me to save myself. I've been paying attention and hoping for more politicians who become less politicians and become interested in engaging with their community, their constituents in a way that's collaborative and not the constituents sending their needs to that lawmaker or whatever. Like, Beto tries to do a little of that, it seems, when he goes to his town halls and things. And, there's a couple of people I've seen here that are more about we're all governing, not me governing. How do we separate and get out of that? Because it's really disturbed me over the years too, when I'd, see my more progressive, I hate to throw these terms out too, but several of my progressive friends that would look at a candidate as, oh, that candidate is so hot, and I'm like, that doesn't fucking matter. It's like, what do they stand for? Do they have integrity, whatever? And they're like, well, he's a hot guy, or she's a hot chick, or I'm like, stop it. This whole cult of personality, putting all this power into another person. So that's one thing that's been on my mind. And the other thing that's been interesting for me, I haven't been following the news much since I moved here, but what I've been doing again is buying the actual paper of the Taos News. And I really love the fact that they still have the folks that will stand on a street corner and sell you the paper. I really love that. And there's just something about getting myself personally back into opening that paper, like reading the stories. A lot of it's like, less about all this winding everybody up and more about what cool things people are doing in the community. And, and I also forgot how much I missed being in a smaller town and reading the police blotter. It's like one of the joys in life. I never laugh so hard as when I read the police blotter. So, but there's something about, stepping away from that, social media driven, just continuing to rile people up and all that, like just stepping back and thinking about it. So anyway, those are a couple of my thoughts around this.
Yeah, when people identify with some ideology or, get into some kind of like cult-like relationship with a political party or whatever, then they're putting themselves in opposition to others, and we see that in a big way now. There's this thing going on. You put up a Black Lives Matter sign in your yard, one of those values sign, or some people would say that's values signaling.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody next door puts up another sign that says all lives matter, and their own set of like slogans,
Yeah.
So there's sign wars going on. Actually, I was looking for that the other day. You know which signs I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Turns out that there's
Just
all kinds of variations appearing on those signs. You can buy several different flavors of value signaling signs, basically. And, you know, people are sort of identifying with those values and with what they represent in the party or whatever. And it's just getting a little crazy out there. And then I was reading today also a longish article in Current Affairs, which I should find so I can show you guys. But it's an article about, I'm sure you're familiar with Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi, who are a couple of guys that, a couple of journalists who are known for being really pretty far to the left. And this article talks about how they have both been embracing right-wing talking points. Here it is. How to End Up Serving the Right.
Oh, wow.
By Nathan Robinson. And it's a really good article in Current Affairs. It's kind of long and drawn out. Well, long anyway. It's actually an excellent article. But part of what the article does is kind of show how much confusion there is over the political positions of the right and the left. Some people on the left have been actually moving to the right because they think that they find some affinity. A good example is the cancel culture thing. Originally, the left talked about cancel culture, then the right adopted it and turned it into a big deal. But now you see people who you usually associate with the left who are starting to come out and sort of repeat what the guys on the right are saying about cancel culture. Bill Maher is a good example of that. Bill Maher has taken that on. I mean, he's starting to, these people are starting to be critical of the left in ways that they're borrowing or taking from the right. And it's creating a lot of confusion, I think, because nobody kind of can figure out what anybody believes anymore, you know? And I think that all of these weird positions that people take, cancel culture is a real good example. The right says that the left is canceling people, it's terrible. And earlier the left was saying the right was canceling people, it's terrible. They're all canceling people. This is something that's been going on forever. It's not that the other guys are doing it, it's everybody does it.
It's not, to me, it's not canceling, it's consequences. It's just a matter of how the public is dealing with consequences this particular century or 20 years. You know, this is what this is the consequences. And there haven't been consequences for a really long time. And I'll bet that feels overwhelming. But
yeah, people.
I mean, it is.
People have been getting fired and told to get out of town and told to leave companies and told to leave political parties for a very long time. It's just people lately love to have a label. Labels are very, trendy. You can really get somebody stirred up. You have a catchy sounding label.
Yeah.
But these labels are usually applied to things that have been around for a very long time.
I mean, in this article, he talks about how there's this sort of fantasy, really, that the left is in control of everything and that the right is being suppressed in some way. And he points out, he says, the right have complete control of the Supreme Court and many other courts because they've added a bunch of judges during the Trump administration. And the courts have the final word on a lot of things, and for the right to argue that the left is totally 100% in control and marginalizing them, the guys on the right, is crazy. They're taking power like nobody's business right now. And it's really unwholesome. Any situation where either the right or the left, especially the extreme right or extreme left, is completely in control is a bad situation. It's probably better if we hash things out. Reach across the aisle is the term they have for it. They used to do that. The government used to operate on a synthesis, really, of thinking from both sides because they had to come to agreements about things. But right now, what the right has been trying to do is completely eliminate the influence of the left and say, well, we're just not going to work with those guys. We're not going to do anything with them. Mitch McConnell saying, no, I'm not going to let Biden appoint a Supreme Court nominee. If I have anything to say about it, he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's like saying, well, the Democrats are bad guys. We're not going to let them do anything.
Like if the Democrats said, we're going to make a law where everybody has to wear Jesus t-shirts, which you would think they would like, they would just vote against it because it's the Democrats saying, it's definitely out of hand. It's ridiculously out of hand. And one of the things I've come to realize is how much when people go into this thing where they're accusing somebody or some other side of some horrible thing, usually it's them doing it. It's this like mass projection. It's really surreal to me.
That's actually become a strategy, I think, on the right, is to take things that that's one thing that they do. The other thing is to take something that is happening that tends to be on the left and turn it into a terrible thing, to turn a term into pejorative, like in Black Lives Matter and prior to that. There's been a history in Black culture of this term woke. And in Black Lives Matter, they started talking about it, and it represented, racial sensitivity and awareness. Well, now you've got a bunch of right-wing people talking about how terrible woke culture is and how woke culture and cancel culture are related and how they're, basically what they're saying is that racial sensitivity is a terrible thing. And, I can't agree with that.
Well, it's a terrible thing if you're the
racist
people that are suddenly being pointed out as being racist. It's like, well, you're just overreacting. But, cancel culture is going to be coming into the Supreme Court really quickly, because if you paid attention to the Obamacare ruling today, where they had a 7-2 ruling saying Obamacare is fine, I'm going to be looking to see how much the Republicans are going to be saying, well, let's get rid of those Republican in name only justices who voted for Obamacare.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is, it doesn't matter how conservative you are. If you actually make a good, logical decision and it goes against the party line, then you're going to be canceled.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of what I always thought. If say that a lot of these people got the theocracy they've always wanted, say that happened, how long would it take before they're all like murdering and canceling one another because you're not the right religious sect? We've already seen it throughout the Christian church. Like, who is the right Protestant sect? Who is
I don't think we're that far away from that.
No, we're not. And, that's the thing. They always, it's always this, like, you think they're going to stop at you?
It's the drunken gnomes.
Yeah, because you're on their side. As long as you're one of them, but
then they need more to feed on, right?
We just saw this like on the grand stage, like, with all of these people being thrown under the bus by Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the whole religious issue has taken an interesting turn. The Southern Baptist Convention has been, basically the Republican religion for some time. They took a turn away from the hard right just in their current meeting that I think they just wrapped up, and they elected a more, not perhaps liberal, but a less evangelical, hard right leader. And that was unheard of for all these years, because basically the Republican Party took over the Baptist Church, the Southern Baptist Church, back in the 70s. And it's been driven hard to the right ever since. But seeing that change, they elected an African American minister who doesn't
Wow.
promote all of the hard right, politics. And I read that and I'm like, that is a big deal.
Pat Robertson's been freaking out a little bit. He was especially freaking out when Trump was still around in office. He would say things like, "You can't say that kind of thing, Mr. President," and just, I think that's, also indicative of, they're following their leaders too, and their leaders are finally saying, except for that one guy, Graham, is that his name? The younger Graham who has a drinking problem and a young woman problem. Franklin Graham. I think that's his name.
Yeah, Billy Graham's son.
Yeah.
That guy. Wow.
He's a piece of work.
Oh man, is he something? But yeah, he hasn't. I mean, he loves Trump.
We should.
They're big friends. Church. Okay, I'm thinking cult though. As long as we're talking about the cult thing, why not? Like a early version of Scientology. You could be the L. Ron Hubbard.
I'm up for that.
I'm fucking Xenu. All right.
There you go.
I'm going to bow out on that one. I've seen what happens to a lot of the cult followers.
Wait, when you said that, did you mean the word fucking as an adjective or a verb?
Both. No one's gonna want to come near me.
Yeah. With talk about cancel culture, how Scientology goes after the flock that disobeys. It's pretty terrible.
I was canceled.
IRS and
we were.
You were?
Well, Maggie, do you remember Jared Poor?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jared Poor he started a web page on the Well that was sort of anti-Scientology and included a bunch of stuff about Scientology. And of course, the Well got a cease and desist letter from Scientology. And I think we had to take stuff down, to keep them from getting sued.
That's pretty impressive though.
Yeah.
If they took notice,
Yeah, if you
they're looking for
them, it means you've really arrived. Because
yeah, for sure, man. That is a feather in your cap.
And it generally means you hit the nail on the head, literally.
Oh yeah.
And the nail is protesting.
Nice.
So years ago, when I was a professional burger slinger, what do they call that? There's a word for that. Burger flipper.
Fry cook.
Yeah, burger flipper. Yeah.
A flipologist.
I was working for a Burger King. This was when I was like a college student, I think, or just out of college, maybe. I went to work for this Burger King. And
you and a burger knave?
They put me, I got put in charge of a shift, like, just kind of the go-to guy for the shift. There were two shifts, and another guy got put in charge of the other shift. And the other guy that got put in charge of a shift was a Scientology guy.
Oh my God.
Right.
He was kind of a wild-eyed Scientology guy. He was pretty competent, hence, being put in charge. But people from his shift would come to me and beg me to figure out some way to get them onto my shift instead, because this guy was scaring them. And he kept talking about how we're going to have a system. We're going to have a great system, He never really got down to what the system was, but he kept talking about how they were going to have the system and it was going to run, like clockwork. It was pretty
well. Cool. Honestly, though, their methodology whatever they do is used. And in fact, there was an insurance place, Allstate uses their training program.
Ugh.
Yeah. And then there was another one who used it too. They were smaller, and they actually found out that there were Scientologists like infiltrated the company and everything. Another one that used one of their, that was a really weird thing too. But yeah, they have a training program or something that they do that is apparently it works and people employ it.
Yeah, and they made inroads with Nation of Islam too, which
Oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. There's one of the, Leah Remini and Mike Render's excellent series on Scientology. They were delving into that a bit. And also, and I just, it makes me think of, I'm not surprised. I've seen a lot of people who aren't necessarily Scientologists. They'll go, yeah, but they provide this good blah, blah. It's like, that's where they get it.
Exactly.
Same with freaking Landmark. I mean, I've had so many people over the years try to sell me Landmark. I'm like, I know it's est. Don't try to I know it. I've been around a while. I know what it is. And, it's just like, oh, but it freed me up to, I've lived my best life now and all this stuff. Like, well, great, go for it. But I'm not interested. It creeps me.
I'm surprised at how many people are into that.
Yeah.
Do you remember
you and I have worked with somebody who was into that.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the Children of God, John? They used to shop at Whole Foods, and man, they were so crazy. Oh wow! Have you seen that movie?
Normal.
Are those the One World Theater Builder people? No.
Those are they.
Joe Rogan, right, owns their old little.
Yeah.
Did Joe Rogan buy the One World Theater?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that was where he landed.
Songs and dancing.
Interested? Is that what we're gonna say? I don't care for him. I wish he were not in Austin.
Who, Joe Rogan?
Yeah. I think he's
he's got a nice haircut.
That says a lot about him. I guess
I don't know. I mean, his podcast. I think his podcast is getting a little more traction than ours.
I have heard
frankly.
that. I haven't checked the stats though. But we're not going to be.
Why. I mean, I think we're a lot more fun than he is.
Because we're not controversial. We don't interview controversial people, and we don't.
It's because I'm not a bodybuilder.
Oh, is that what it? God.
I'd be
that's
to
easy
interview
to
controversial
fix.
people. Actually, but we interview interesting people.
Yeah, I know, but not.
We're working right now on like getting UFO people. People to talk about UFOs.
Interesting does not equate with what was the other word we just said? Interesting. Interesting is not the same as controversial.
Controversial, yeah.
Right. That does not. Those.
No,
don't
I get
equate.
it. I understand.
I think that we need to develop our own line of supplements, right? And sell.
Ooh.
But be made like out of like peanut butter and Vienna sausages or something, and like smoothies and.
Yeah.
Well, I can contribute to that. I have a secret recipe for Cajun spice that I've been giving to my friends for years in a little bottle that'll probably rip your lungs out if you inhale it. But it tastes good. That's Plutopia spice.
Yeah, we need a line of exciting products. And
that would be really fun.
I'm just glad that. Like smart, rational people are starting to talk about UFOs truly seriously, and
finally, right?
Yeah, and that we can kind of do that, and we can find people who can be really, pretty clear-eyed about the whole thing.
Right.
So we're not smart, rational people then. Does that
No, I'm saying we can get
the loony fringe
others to join us.
We can get others.
There was a time that the only people people were afraid to talk about UFOs if they were sane and rational, because they were afraid that that, you know, they'd get this sort of tinfoil hat image, so they wouldn't want to do it. But now people are okay talking about it because it's been in the New York Times.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I just read a book by Mark Pilkington, who we've been in touch with, called Mirage Men. And today I watched the film Mirage Men. The book was actually sort of written at the same time that they were making this film, this documentary. But it is about how there was apparently a government program to kind of yank the chain of UFO cultists or whatever,
Of
you know, people who were
course.
in UFO culture, and that they drove one guy crazy, you know,
Mhm.
and
Jeez. Just one?
you know, the question about whether this, is there a real thing that's happening, or is it just some kind of government disinformation campaign,
Right.
or is there, like, are there both, and is the government disinformation campaign obscuring the actual reality and you know, thing that needs to be researched scientifically, of some kind of weird phenomena in the skies that nobody can quite figure out?
Well, I actually read a lot. I mean, a lot, 1,500 pages of declassified CIA documents about UFOs. That, you know, I believe I sent you a link to those, John. The group called the Black Vault had
Oh yeah.
received a CD of declassified documents, and they were all over the place. I mean, the CIA really didn't want to be associated with it officially, but they had a lot of projects that were looking into anything involving UFOs, any extraterrestrial, news. They wanted to know about it. But anytime someone asked, "Well, is the CIA involved?" No, 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 that's the Air Force. You need to go talk to the Air Force. They would refer it to the Air Force, and of course, the Air Force was pissed off because they were getting, you know, all these referrals from the CIA when it really was the CIA who was interested in this stuff. But it went in all different directions. There were documents that made it sound like the CIA was really investigating these, realistic sounding reports from normal people and from military people. And then there were really crazy folk, and they were giving them a lot of attention as well. And then they had a lot of documents about the Nazis having their own flying saucer, and so the stuff was all over the place, and it's really hard to see where they were coming from because they seem to be coming from all directions at the same time. But that's
Yeah.
kind of the way the
And
CIA
that needs,
operates. They like to confuse people.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
stuff all needs to be sorted out and not buried and not manipulated and not, you know, used for disinformation campaigns.
Yeah. Well, the whole Mirage Men thing, I watched that on YouTube also, and it's very reminiscent of MK Ultra and the stuff that the
Mm.
CIA and the FBI did to, uh, you know, the leftists of the early, late early '60s and early '70s, where they were, putting disinformation, campaigns in place with everybody that was what they considered a threat. And I can't see them not being interested in doing some disinformation with the UFO cult.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, it's growing up with all this. I had multiple sightings when I was younger, up into my teens, all in different places, and just the nature of my father's work in naval intelligence and
Yeah,
my
your dad was a
uncle
UFO
was
pilot, right?
no, he was intelligence, yeah, and then my uncle was in Air Force intelligence and worked on Project Blue Book. So, but I just remember I tried to tell some of my friends again until the X Files came out, and then people started thinking about this stuff.
Yeah.
you know, and they just look at me like, oh, I've never seen anything, so I don't know what you're talking about or whatever. And again, I've told people, and this is way before cell phones even, like how many of you actually look up during the day? Most people never look up. And, you know, seriously, and now it's even worse. So of course you're never going to see anything, but, you know, I saw weird stuff. My brother saw weird stuff when he was surveying for the Bureau of Land Management. And, you know, it's just kind of interesting. I'll have to dig out the photo that my brother took when he was at the Chimayo, the Santuario in Chimayo, the church, the famous church. And he was just taking pictures, and he got back home and he looked at them, and there's a flotilla of UAPs, I guess they're called now, over the church.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
I'll take it out for our show, so we have that one. But
Okay.
Yes.
So all those angels weren't really angels. They were.
that's right. Well, I've always been fascinated with all those old, like medieval and Renaissance paintings with their, you know, like off in the distance, you see a UFO, like, okay. Yeah.
Well, I like what you said about the people don't look up anymore. They're on their phones. You know, if the extraterrestrials want to be noticed now, they're going to have their own app.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to call. And I'm not picking up if it says spam risk.
Alien risk.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like what I've seen before. They're there and then they're not. I mean, how the hell do they do that? Or, you know, the way they move is like not, you know, that's why it always cracked me up when people say, oh, it's a helicopter. It's like, I know what a helicopter looks like, for the love of God.
Well, they may have just hired some really good virtual reality folks.
Right.
Well, so you
Way
have,
back then.
you have these Navy pilots who saw aerial phenomena and reported it and had video of it, and now the videos are released, and people are saying, well, you know, that could very well just be a problem, like a reflection on the lens of the camera. It's like the guys say they saw the things. It's not, you know, they're not looking through the camera, they're looking at the thing. So
there's no reflection on those cameras.
I have to find too, another thing I'll look up. There's a pretty famous, Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident. Have you heard about that one before?
I don't think so.
It was Iceland to Alaska. Yeah, this captain's recording, like this thing is paralleling them the whole time. And there's
Oh my God.
I think on YouTube you can find where they've got the flight, you know, the sounds of the flight or whatever, and they do a kind of recreation of what this guy saw. Japan,
I did hear about this. Yes. I think I saw it on YouTube also. Wow. I forgot about that. Oh my God. Well, I mean, yeah, I think the subterfuge thing is valid. I think that maybe they're giving us a bone because there's too much now, and you got cell phones and you got people who are in the military who are doing these things who actually get private footage of that stuff. So maybe they're giving us a little bit, but in order to, you know, obfuscate the fact that there's an actual alien somewhere.
Yeah, the problem people always point out is the lack of really crystal clear, good video and photo evidence. Yeah, it's always that.
I know, grainy crap.
It's like the Sasquatch photos. Sasquatch is always kind of hazy and in a fog somewhere in the trees.
I mean, now there's no excuse. Take out your damn iPhone. It's that easy.
Well, we've had them for quite a while, but I still haven't seen the real crystal clear. There is some good footage though of stuff in it, and it's hard to get a good nighttime, you know, image on any kind of camera.
Have they only been photographed at night? Is that the only ones that have been shown so far?
No.
No, there's
No.
data.
There's,
Yeah. And there's a lot of footage from over the last like 10 or more years from like the Mexican Air Force they've caught like tons of stuff, right? In broad daylight, just like people in like Mexico City outside, and they're all watching the same thing going on up above, and like, yeah.
so I don't understand. So one thing that's kind of confusing about the idea of a conspiracy on this, though, is that no other countries would have had this experience, or some others have, and they're just being as secretive as we are, or all the governments are in on it together. I mean, because somebody would let it out of the bag. Some country's going to let it out.
There are a lot of countries who've had these experiences, and there was a guy in, I think, a guy in the Israeli government who said that that Earth had been in contact, the governments of Earth had been in contact with extraterrestrials, and that there's actually some kind of partnership or collusion, or I don't know, maybe we have a treaty with them or something like that. It sounds a little weird, though. I mean,
like the world, or like the United States. Who is our coalition leader who's dealing with these people? Is it the UN?
It's a good question, because I mean, consider this. They always assume that extraterrestrials, if they come to Earth, are going to contact the government.
I know, right?
To the government, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think so. I think that they would go straight to the pop stars, really, probably.
You'd go to someone who didn't have an air force or an army behind them who could blow you away with the touch of a button. You might want to go to someone that maybe is just a media star who can, put in a good word for you before someone pushes the button.
Make a TikTok. Introduce yourself.
Well, if I was an alien, I wouldn't go to Mitch McConnell. Jeez.
Oh my God, what an asshole.
He'd kill you for sure.
Yeah.
There was a story by George Alec Effinger, a science fiction writer, about aliens coming to Earth and landing, and they all wore leisure suits and wanted to buy like velvet paintings.
I saw those guys.
It's like the aliens had mostly bad taste and they were consumers.
Well, I mean, is it out of the question that they already walk among us?
Well, that's David Icke, the British guy, says that there are reptilian aliens on Earth and that they conceal themselves and pretend to be human. And, I can think of several people that I think are probably reptilian.
Well, Louis Gohmert for one.
Oh my God.
The scales on him.
I think Trump is beginning to crawl out of his or slough his off because, dude,
that's not
that
guy. That's his scaling.
He's not human. I mean,
not recognizably so.
Yeah, because the suit isn't fitting right anymore, really, is it? It's kind of
that Brian Williams the quote just killed me. A retiree in giant pants. I couldn't stop laughing.
Dear President Trump, the zipper goes in front.
I don't understand.
Probably it's a good thing if it doesn't on his pants, because he is kind of a danger in that area.
You guys are to deal with his visit. Are they going to do some kind of border thing and at the end of June? I'm so sorry.
There's a question I have. So what happens what do you think will happen if Texas actually starts to build that wall? Where do you think Texans come down on property being seized versus building a wall? Just overall, like, who wins that game?
Well, the word on that, and this I heard today, in fact, was that the government was asking people to donate property for the wall. They're not like seizing it. They're trying to get people to just give it to them. Good patriotic Republicans on the border, you
Right.
know,
Right.
to just give us, a bit of your property there for our wall so we can build a wall on it and it'll be, you'll have
There's
a nice ugly wall on your property.
Well,
and
you'll
so
have a
once
body wall because you can't count on everyone to step right up and, oh, well, we're going to all give our land.
yeah,
When the government was using eminent domain, I mean, the lawyers were the only one that were really making out because everybody filed suit on that.
well,
You'll
this
be
is how it
you'll
starts.
be safe from illegal aliens who don't have ladders.
Yeah, yeah.
But they might have UFOs, so they can just.
Well, yeah, if they've got UFOs, they're going to get over that wall. And I'm thinking aliens do, most of them.
But the
No,
wall
but
is just a symbol, it's just, I mean,
well, of course, but that's not even but the symbol isn't even, I'm just down at brass tacks right now. Like, I don't know any normal old school Republican conservatives who would be okay with any Texan losing land for any reason.
Yeah, that's always been a big no-no in Texas, especially. Every time they've tried to build any kind of the light rail between Houston and Dallas,
Oh God.
they're trying to resurrect that again, and the same people are in there with the attorneys are going, okay, we're going to get a new Porsche because they started the light rail again. So you'll have lawsuits, and everybody will be going nowhere.
well, kind of my point about
Literally.
the symbol is that you don't have to build the wall. You just have to talk about building the wall.
Yeah, it's politics.
That's it.
That's very, very true. That's very true. I just wonder, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what do you think that this would be something that would turn Texas blue?
I don't know.
Because
It might
it's
turn it
just-
purple.
I think I can think of several things that might turn Texas blue, but I'm not sure how much traction we can get with the degree of gerrymandering
oh no, I
that
know.
we have in this
It's
state, and
It would
just basic
a-
cheating.
it would be a question of them shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, again and again and again, like trying to take their constituents' property.
Did anyone see Ted Cruz and John Cornyn today talking about the gerrymandering by the Democrats with their voting rights? It's like they're going to try and prevent Republicans from being reelected for 100 years. Like, wait, I thought
If only.
Projection.
And we're coming for your guns too. Didn't you see?
Well, you know what their position is. They say the Democrats keep stealing elections by voting.
I know. It's
Those pesky voters.
unconscionable.
It really is.
Have any of you seen anybody of a Republican nature be upset about the whole grid thing? And if so, who are they mad at?
The grid?
No, they're not mad. My mom.
Huh?
Well, with ERCOT, first they get screwed during
that, yeah.
and now the whole, you have to turn up your thermostat thing. Are any of them angry at all, or like how are they justifying to themselves?
I've actually wondered about that. I think that if the governor has a problem in the next election, it will be that whoever's running against him is going to dredge that up, and that was definitely. You can really lay that at the feet of the Republican Party, but they're pretty good at
Spinning it the other
dancing around these things.
The Republicans I know are talking about how it's not worth putting the money into.
Yeah,
Just
that's
like
one of
the
those
whole
people.
reason that we're here. Well, it only happens once in a blue moon, so it's just not worth it. So, and then because they think this is a 100-year thing. They don't think this is ever going to happen again in the next however long or next year, which it could.
And the Republicans will say, well, the Democrats caused that by lowering the temperature
Exactly.
Yeah.
down to 0. And it's really their fault.
Did you see that joke about Marjorie Taylor Greene after she apologized for the Holocaust remark? So she compared wearing masks to being in the Holocaust. So then she went to the Holocaust Museum and came out and apologized. And somebody said, quick, build a climate change museum.
There you go.
That'll work.
And if they, I really wish they'd stop using that comparison. Question for Texas too. Are there any Republicans remotely better than Abbott that are going to run against him? Have you heard any?
I don't know of any so far. The one person who's talking about running against Abbott, who might be interesting, is Matthew McConaughey.
Mm-hmm.
And, I haven't heard much about that recently, but apparently he was pretty serious about it.
Yeah, we need another star in the office.
And he
That's
might have
what it
been,
is now.
his intention might have been to run as a Republican. Because it's not clear that he's a Democrat, but I actually think that he might run.
I've seen him. Well, he may be an independent, but I've seen him. I saw him at a couple of rallies. I think one of them was the March for Our Lives rally. So I think that was right. Anyway, yeah, I think it was a gun rally. I mean, like anti-gun thing at the Capitol, and he spoke even. I can't remember what he said, but anyway, I what's scary to me is that the Democrats don't have anybody. I mean, last time we didn't have anybody. I mean, we couldn't find anybody. We shook every tree, and and now here we are again. Nobody's thought about
this. It's a weak party. It's a very weak party.
Well, the whole vetting process gets rid of any real talent because you have to have all the boxes checked on your resume of, well, you can't offend them and you can't offend them. You have to be for this and this and this. And no one is, other than a complete, false created, resume. Someone just makes it up and say, yeah, I'm for all of that. And you find out later they weren't for any of it. It's impossible to find a good person in politics.
Well,
yep, and we elect them to represent us. So what does that say about us?
What do you mean we?
Do you vote, sir? Unfortunately, it is an interesting, I don't know, a little back and forth I have with some people on Twitter about Texas and what they've, we deserve because of who we voted for. And I'm just like, have you not heard of gerrymandering? There it is. And exactly, Scoop. It's not we who voted for these people, but we are their fucking constituents,
I continually take the time to correct those people, especially my Bay Area friends, who have never been to Texas, have no idea what's going on, have no interest in finding out. So I gently and not so kindly correct them. Anyway.
All you have to do is send them a copy of the district layouts on a map.
Yeah.
Some really strange, shapes. It's like, that's not a shape found in nature.
Yeah, when I finally looked at District 10, which I was living in for a while, I was like, wait a minute, how does it go all the way to Houston? How does that
funny,
work?
Isn't it?
It's not funny.
So we're about to run out of time, but I did check. Wikipedia has an article on 2022 gubernatorial elections.
Okay.
And for Texas, they show that a comedian and talk show host named Chad Prather is running against Abbott.
You see?
And Beto O'Rourke is kind of expected to run against him or to attempt to run against him. And Julian Castro may run against him. And then there's McConaughey. So
in
that's
the-
what
in the
they've got so
primaries,
far.
we need to do what they always accuse Democrats of doing, is going and voting for the really, really crazy minor candidate,
Yeah.
and try to draw away from Abbott, anything but Abbott.
I think that out of that group, Matthew McConaughey could beat him.
Okay, I want to show you quickly that this is our man. See, he's got a cowboy hat.
Oh, yeehaw!
Common sense for Texas. And
He's
he
got a hat.
also, look at the
He's got the
belt.
belt buckle.
Does he
He's
have
got
cattle?
it, man.
Is he all hat and no cattle, or does he have cattle? I want
There's
to
a lot of hat there.
They don't show his feet though, so I don't know if he's wearing cowboy boots. So he may only be a half and half.
Well, he looks real.
Yeah.
Any
Yes,
man with a
maybe.
cowboy hat has got a good chance.
Well, and he's pro-life. Right on.
And he's
Pew, pew, pew.
right. Got that Garth Brooks kind of look going on.
He
And,
does. Yes.
yeah.
We're doomed.
We're doomed.
All right. Well, and we are also done, doomed and done.
Yay.
So, and I won't be here next week, but I will be thinking about all of you as I float in Lake Tahoe.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Yay. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It was fun, folks.
See
Y'all-
y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.